with us.
Welcome to Tribal Trails. We're so glad that you joined us today. Our guest today is a special young man whose name is Chris Boyko. And he's a football player. So I'm very, very excited to hear his story. And I know you will too. So Chris, tell us a little bit about your background first and where you came from.
I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Ah,
and
cold city.
Cold city. And I was raised in the north end of Winnipeg, but my mom moved around from community to community for just numerous reasons, whether it was to escape paying the rent because she couldn't, or to run from someone who, she was just trying to get away from. And we were just going along with her.
Yeah.
I remember too when I was 10, 11, and 12, and how I would, go into a school, and it would be my first day at school. In the middle of a year, who knows when I entered the school year, and I would just feel so awkward. Yeah. And I would know nobody, and it was so hard to make friends because literally in a week or two I would be gone again. So I kind of just isolate myself and just said, I'm not going to know anybody, so I'm not going to even try. It was extremely confusing and unsettling, I would say. Yeah. Throughout school, in the earlier part of my life, I was more distracted with what was going on in our life at home. See, my mom and my dad, they got divorced. I might have been 5, from what I can remember, so young that I can't even really remember my age. At that time of my life, what I remember the most was the division between my mom and my dad. So they were married, they got divorced, and here I am now, me and my brother Adam, in the north end of Winnipeg. And so we ended up, by law, being with our mom. Oh. And every second Sunday I would see my dad. And oftentimes that wouldn't work out, so there were times where I just didn't see my dad. And so in my mind, I thought he didn't want us. He left us, and at that age, you don't know what really has gone on in the relationship. You don't even understand relationships. All you know is that you crave a dad, or you crave stability, safety.
Yeah.
And in my life at that age, we didn't have that. Yeah. My mom ended up getting hooked up with people in the drug industry. She ended up being a person who was selling the drugs. She ended up being a person who started to use the drugs. Yeah. I can remember household parties. And, as a kid, you're thinking, this is fun. Yeah. We got a live band in my living room. The guitars being played. Everyone's loud. But the problem was there was drinking and there was drugs. And then every week always ended up in a violent fight, someone getting stabbed or shot, my mom getting beat up. And here we are as little kids growing up in the north end of Winnipeg. Yeah. And at my school, kids would actually tease me. Yeah. They would say, your mom's on welfare, and they would tease me for being, in those days, an Indian. Yeah. And I just found it so hurtful. One, I didn't like being poor. One, I wasn't proud of the neighborhood we lived in or the house. I was actually embarrassed at times to bring my friends over to my house. Yeah, it was just hard for a kid like myself and my brother to understand that, no one really wanted to hang with us in that neighborhood because of where we lived. And yeah, we were on welfare, I will admit. My mom was on social assistance. Yeah. It's wrong to say and only recognize the bad, I think. I have some great memories. Like, my mom really went out of her way to try to get us what we wanted, like for whether it was for our birthdays or, she really tried in her own way. And it may not have been like the most moral way, but I can see her trying, and that my mom also came from a background of abuse. And those things are things that she actually carried in her life. And, you know, I understand now why abuse existed in my life. You know, these are hurtful things to say and talk about, that a mom that you, the only person in your life that you trust because you don't really have anyone else in your life, has done something like that to you. It's very hard to wrap your mind around that as you age.
Yeah.
So this violent environment, the drugs, the abuse, you know, it kind of caused me to become a really angry kid. And I had a lot of, I was like, let's just say, misdirected passion. I looked at the people in my life, the men in my life. My mom had numerous boyfriends come in and out, and these guys were so abusive. They would beat her up, literally. And I spent my life as a kid figuring out a way how I can get revenge.
Yeah.
I made a vow that I would one day kill the man that would beating up my mom and myself and my brother. I made this vow to hurt a guy. Yep. And I got hooked up into martial arts. Yep. And this became my outlet, but I had a motive of defending my mom by learning how to fight. And I became more of a weapon. Yeah. Of destruction. Yeah. And I planned to train so hard that I would hurt the person across from me. And when I competed in the ring as a fighter back then, I would literally visualize the men who were abusive in my life across from me. Oh. And I just wanted people to know who I am, because I just felt like no one knew or cared who I was. And I will make them know who I am. And I just happen to be kind of good. You know, when you play football or play a sport, oftentimes you get to have your name on the back of your jersey. Like, everyone's gonna know my name. In fact, when I was still fighting, I ended up getting a tattoo on my body. I just wanted people to know me. I got my own name tattooed on my own back, so that when I want to fight, I could turn around. This is who did it to you. You will know my name. And it's crazy how things have changed.
So when was the first time that you heard about God?
Okay. So my dad, even though he divorced my mom, so he ended up developing a relationship with a woman who, indigenous woman. They had a church. And every year they would have a faith Bible camp. So, and I don't know if my mom just wanted to get rid of me and my brother for a summer or something like that, or if she thought it would be good for us. Yeah. We would go, we were around every second Sunday, this family. Oh, yes. And so I just wanted to hang out and have burgers and hang out and get to know my dad. However, we would go to church. And here I am at, 10, 11, 12, going to church every second Sunday. However, I look back and I go, God, you were trying to reach me back then. Yeah. Like, you were really trying to show me your love through people of God. That one thing that I remember the most about that time was that I never felt accepted in a lot of environments. However, when I came into church, at that time, I just felt like, and especially when we went to Faith Bible Camp, I just felt like one of the kids. Because of the poverty that I was in, and the welfare, the social assistance, the environment, I just thought that distinction that was normally separating me from some of the other kids in school, when I went to church, I never felt that way. I look back at that time, the Faith Bible Camp, and even though there were times that I was falling asleep in chapel, there were seeds that were planted at a very young age. And I look back at those times, how he was preparing me for what I'm actually doing now.
This road we travel in this life will be strewn with trouble and strife. My tears are falling on this trail. There were times I've had to fail. I have come a long, long way, yeah, from this journey I cannot stray. Where can I go? Where can I be? When your life holds the truth I see.
How did you get out of that environment?
My mom escaped. I think that my mom did what she did best, and it was run.
Oh, okay.
And so me and my brother and my mom started a new life in Calgary. You know, you can run from a place, but when that place actually comes with you, and it was in her, she just ended up doing the same thing in Calgary, getting connected to men who were abusive. And it got even worse actually in Calgary at 12, where these men now actually became super violent towards me.
Yeah.
I literally remember a time when my mom and her boyfriend were fighting, and he kicked down my door as I was in bed. And I literally had to make a decision to jump out of my bed to defend myself. And then, and really at that point in time, I made a decision that no man is going to ever abuse me or my mom ever again.
At 12, that's amazing.
And I was able to beat him up, actually. I was able to kick him and punch, like, who does like him? And then another guy came, and the same thing over and over and over. And at, 15, 16, I wanted to move out. And I'm like, I'm on my own now. That was around the time in Calgary where I met the woman of my dreams, who is my wife. I've been married to
You're kidding, at 15.
At 16.
At 16.
I met my wife in Calgary, downtown. Hanging with her took me away from this chaos, and it gave me peace. We've been married 21 years now, been through a lot. She knows about a lot of that stuff that has happened in my life because she's been through it with me, partially. But what she didn't know she was getting into was that boy from Winnipeg, who was now destined to be her husband, was carrying so much pain inside of him into our marriage. So all of my childhood pain, all of my childhood anger, all of my childhood addictions, that, the things that I got caught up in came with me into my marriage with my wife, Lonette.
How old were you when you married?
I was, 25?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so you were together for a while before.
Yeah. So she moved from Calgary to Toronto at one point, and I'm like, oh, I can't live without her. I got to go to Toronto. So then we moved to Toronto. And, I was in love, crazy young love. You're going to do whatever it takes to be with the one you love, right?
Right.
So we had a lot of challenges in our relationships.
Yeah.
And I would say, admittedly, the challenges were me. Yeah. In fact, I started to become like the abusive men that were in my life.
That you knew.
And I not only did I vow to, get revenge on these guys, I also vowed to never be like that. But I became like that. And I started to do things that no married man should ever do. This led to a destruction in my marriage, 10 years into our marriage. And I was really confused. I thought, here I am in football now for...
So tell me about football.
I got hooked up into football when I was really young. One of my friends invited me to try out for a team when I was 10. And to make the team, you had to race each other. And if you won the race, then, you're on the team, you're the running back. And I'm like, okay. So I loved it ever since. And it became part of my social significance because now I'm known for being a football player.
There's something you can do.
And throughout the years, my lifelong dream was to play professional football. And, you know, I just wanted to play football in the CFL. Back then, I wanted to play for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I wanted to wear that gold and blue, you know. And, you know, throughout the years, so then I moved from Winnipeg to Calgary. Then I became a Calgary Stampeders fan, okay? I wanted to play for Wally Buono. Wally Buono was a coach for the Stampeders back in the day. So I worked my way through the levels of football and played junior football in Calgary for the Calgary Colts. Later on, in Toronto, I tried out for the Hamilton Ticats. I didn't make it, and I wanted to play for the BC Lions. So I make the venture over from Toronto to BC. Who's the head coach in BC at the time in 1997? Wally Buono. It didn't work out for me as a professional player. I tried out. I didn't have what it took when I did try. In fact, I ended up quitting trying at a young age, around 25. I just said, you know what, maybe this is not. Or maybe I'm not going to make it. What do I need to do to go to the next step in my life? And I decided to become a fitness trainer and a fitness coach. And I committed myself to learning strength and conditioning and all things fitness. I ended up years down the line, me and my wife, owning a business in personal training and being pretty successful. You know, this success led to my demise because here I am now, this kid growing up not having any worth. I just strived for identity. I wanted to be known. Now I'm getting this success. And I think that it's all me. I work hard. I get the success. This is all my doing. People wanted to train with me because I was getting results. After years in the business, I got an opportunity to train a professional athlete. Everything that I desired. Fame, a little bit of money, notoriety. People wanted to meet me, to train with me, and that was just stroking my ego. And to be honest, I look back at that and I really didn't have the character to handle those blessings that God was giving me. I abused the platform that I was in. You know, I've arrived, but it kind of ended, it kind of led to my destruction as a person, as a man.
Was God in this in any way?
God was always in it, but I wasn't always in God. God was always there. He always sent me people along the way. One of my best friends, Andy, he dealt with his own addictions. He came to Christ. He shared his testimony with me. He actually invited me to a men's ministry meeting. And he said, hey, do you want to come with me? My mouth said this, no, I'm okay. I don't need that. I'm good. I got this. But in my heart and in my mind, the things that he was expressing, I knew that I was struggling with. And I was too prideful to admit it. And I just said no. That was just an example of one of the people God put in my life. And then on the football team, on the BC Lions, one of the players.
And so you made it with
Oh,
BC.
yeah.
You have to tell me about that.
Here I am in the training industry. I get a call saying, would you like to have an interview for the head strength and conditioning job for the BC Lions? And I'm like,
What?
yes, that's what I've been dreaming of all my life. Only God had a different plan. I didn't make it as a player, but God was opening up doors for me as a professional football coach. A lot of gifts that God gave me that I didn't even know that He wanted to use for the benefit of his kingdom. And I didn't know that. I just thought, I'm going to build my kingdom. Everyone's going to know me as a successful coach now. So here I am, growing up with the mindset of destroying all men, not trusting men. In fact, training and studying to the point where I know how to destroy a person. God opened up the door for me to be in a position of service to other men, to build them up, to equip them and to prepare them to get stronger, and so that they can live their dreams. So I found out that God was working in those times. You know, he brought me to this position in football to develop me and to shape me as a leader, as a man of God. Even before I was a man of God, he also put people in my life in that time. One of my favorite guys who has shaped my future is Dave Clawson, was our chaplain for the BC Lions. In fact, I didn't really like Dave Clawson, our chaplain, when I wasn't Christian. I just thought that he always held chapel during a time when the lifting sessions would happen, always taking away the players from the time they need to lift. We're a football team. We need to be strong. There's no time to waste. We don't have time to play around with religion. Oddly enough, Dave Clawson, chaplain, man of God, became one of the men that I looked to the most. He was one of the more authentic people, leaders in my life, who I can look back and say, that's a man of God. He was there when my mom passed away. It was a very hard time because in football, you got to be strong. And I held it in for so long, and it ended up coming out in other ways through my own addictions. But Dave, chaplain of the BC Lions, was there. He just said, can I pray for you? He was there when I made a mess of my life. He was there when my marriage ended. And he's still there, you know, more than 10 years later after coming to Christ.
So how did that happen?
I've become the man I despise. And I believe that there is no hope for me. And I was a wreck on the inside. And my marriage was destroyed. I was now away from my two daughters, Kiana and Tasia. I wanted to be the dad opposite from what I experienced when I was a kid. I became that. And I was now separated from them. You know, I just think of the scripture, you know, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world but to lose his soul? And I gained the world. Like, I feel like I gained all the stuff that I wanted in the world, that the world had to offer. But I lost the most important thing to me, my soul, my wife. And God was working in this time because now I had questions. Yeah. So how it happened, Rita, was that people of God end up coming into my wife's life. She began to change. And I know that because there was a time that I distinctly remember where she invited me back home. And I could literally, before I even knew Christ and accepted him, I could feel the presence of his peace. It was an experience and an encounter. Yeah. And I got to read a story to my kids that night before they went to bed. And she invited me in to watch a message on the computer. It was from the scripture, Romans 12:2. Don't be conformed to the ways of the world and just the ways of society and the things that people are doing, the things that you see people around you. Don't be conformed to those ways. Instead, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And in that moment, it was like a bell went off in my mind and in my heart, and it was like a revelation. I had actually conformed to all the things I never wanted to become. Yeah. And I just, in my logical mind, I just said, okay, I just have to be transformed. But how? What 3 steps, what program do I need to do this? I do it. I can do it. And it just said, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind by the Word of God. And I made a decision in that moment that I would just only read the Word of God. So I went through a time where I got rid of everything else. And the more and more I was in the Word, I began to understand who Jesus was. And then I started to understand who I was and who He was calling me to be. He just gave me so much grace throughout my life that He was actually there in those moments, protecting me as a young child from death. Even in the midst of abuse, that He was shaping me. I began to hear Him as if He was speaking to me. And then one day at the back in the dark at Relate Church in Surrey, I said, Pastor John says, if you want to give your life to Christ, this is between you and Him. And I knew in my heart, Rita, that I was in a place that I could not save myself. And I needed God. And I just said, I know I received Jesus Christ. I believe that He died on the cross for me so that I can be free today. Yeah. Early in 2011. And, since that day, God has been putting me on a journey of just a crazy journey. He's put me on a path now. I'm so grateful for what God has done in my life. My 2 daughters are believers in Jesus Christ. My mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my wife's aunt, my wife's uncle, their 2 kids, her sister, just a chain reaction. Yep. Here we are now. Yeah. I'm 49. Yeah. I'm saved by God. Yeah. And I'm just so grateful for His grace. Yeah. I was slow to learn. Yeah. I'm 49 and I'm just realizing that now. So it's never too late for anyone out there. It's never too late to realize that you can trust in Jesus and be dependent on Him.
Chris is so right. It is never too late. Jesus is always there for you. You can turn your life to Him anytime, and He will give you everlasting life and peace that will change your life forever. If you realize that you've messed up your life and feel hurt, it is time to let go and come to Jesus. Give Him the control of your life, and you can do this right now. Call us at 306-961-2588. And you can also find us on tribaltrails.org, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook.
I have come